Hello and welcome to the Art of Being Human. I'm going to start off with kind of a poem today that I found on the internet. And I'm not sure who wrote it, but I think it was a lady by the name of Laurie Edwards, but I can't be sure about that. But I want to give her full credit. And what it does is it helps people to not get too stressed out about how they're feeling, that whatever feelings they have, it's legitimate, and they can go through that and come out on the other side. I consider it to be quite an encouraging poem, so I'm going to read it to you now. It's called The Mountain. If the mountain seems too big today, then climb a hill instead. If the morning brings you sadness, it's okay to stay in bed. If the day ahead seems heavy and your plans feel like a curse, there's no shame in rearranging. Don't make yourself feel worse. If a shower feels like needles and a bath feels like you will drown, if you haven't washed your hair in days, don't throw away your crown. A day is not a lifetime. A rest is not defeat. Don't think of it as failure, just a quiet kind of retreat. It's okay to take a moment from our anxious, fractured mind. The world will not stop turning while you get things realigned. The mountain will still be there when you want to try again. You can climb it on your own time. Just love yourself till then. Now, when I read that poem, I thought, I like that so much because it's teaching what I want to teach. If you are anxious, if you are depressed, don't consider that your life is over, and don't consider that you are guilty. Don't feel guilty about your feelings. Don't feel guilty about what's troubling you, because everybody's going through something, especially in this time of social unrest and in this time of a pandemic. Everybody's doing something. Everybody's having a problem somewhere. So you don't need to blame yourself and you don't need to feel guilty. Usually we feel guilty about things that we have nothing to do with, or we have an excessive amount of guilt and we don't need to. So, if you are feeling guilty and it's kind of out of hand, or if you are feeling depressed and anxious and it's getting out of hand, don't feel guilty or angry about it. Take stock and look at yourself. It may be something that's in the past that's been unresolved. And it may not be anything that you have anything to do with. You can convince yourself that you're guilty of all kinds of things, but it doesn't mean that you're guilty of all kinds of things. It really doesn't. So we started last time by going through some of the defense mechanisms, and I'm going to continue with that this morning. And the defense mechanisms is what our body does to handle stress. It's our protection from anxiety. It's our protection from stress. And it helps us to interpret our world. It becomes a part of our personality. There are some that are positive. There are some that aren't so positive. But we have to deal with what our bodies are doing. We don't choose what we're doing. Our bodies are doing what they want to do. However, if you think about it and you're aware of what you're doing, then there's a pretty good chance that you can change things, at least to a certain degree. You can't change the way your brain functions, which is why you can't think away an illness. But you can think away and handle it in a different kind of way that can bring you a certain amount of stress relief. And so this is why I'm going into the defense mechanisms, also called adjustment mechanisms. Now, what we started, I'll just review the two that we went through. I'll just review those quickly. The first one was working harder to fill a goal. If you can't do something, try harder and harder and harder until you meet success. And people do that and they have a degree of success with it. But the problem's going to be if you become obsessed with it, and if it doesn't bring you success, it's not always successful, but sometimes it is successful. So it is a mechanism that we need to consider. And employers like people to become compulsive about their work because they work harder and they get more done. But at what kind of a price? If you're going to work harder to achieve a goal, and it's so important to you that it looms large in your life, and that's what you're going to focus on, you have to consider the price that you pay for doing that. If it's successful, it may well be worth it. I'm not telling people not to do that. But if it's not successful, then you've wasted a lot of energy and a lot of time when maybe you could be doing something else instead. It's just something for you to think about. The second one that we talked about was compensation. If you can't be successful in doing one thing, do something else instead, and that's a pretty positive thing. So you have to have in your mind the goals that you want to achieve. And if you want to achieve something and it doesn't work out, then what happens next? What happens next for you? Now, I talked to you about a friend of mine who flunked out of college 3 times, and she ended up by realizing that college wasn't for her. But it can take place in any realm. So sometimes it's worth just changing your direction and doing something else instead. Well, if I weren't a teacher, what would I be doing? Maybe a researcher, or maybe something else. I found success in teaching, and I did it all my life, and I didn't have to work hard to do it. It just kind of came natural to me. But something is not coming natural to you, especially if it's something physical. You have to run, or you're trying to be a sports person, and you're trying to do things like gymnastics or skating. There are a lot of pitfalls along the way, and you have to remember that it's very hard to get a hearing or to be in the public eye, being famous or whatever it is. People give their lives just to be famous or to be rich, and that doesn't last for very long, because we don't last for very long. We're only here on this planet for 70 or 80 years, sometimes longer. Sometimes people pass on in their midlife, and so we have to plan on doing something that's going to be satisfying to us, and enough challenge so it's worth working for, but not so much challenge that you give up your whole life for it, and at the end of the day wish that you hadn't done it because it didn't give you the results that you wanted. I'm a great believer in God, and I really believe that God is going to lead you to the place where you should be. And when he does that, you'll be happy, you'll be satisfied, you'll have the success that you want because he is going to give it to you. So you just have to understand that you don't have to be top dog, you don't have to be anything that you consider to be famous or something. That's not what it's about. It's about doing something that satisfies you, that's pleasing to you, that for you is creative, and you don't have to be in one specific field. It can be any field that you're working in, any field that you like to do. So you can kind of relax about what you're doing and just do the best you can, and then as doors of opportunity open up, walk through them. And if they don't, be content with what you have and what you do, because it will have its eternal reward if you do that. Now, the next one I want to go into is rationalization. Now, I've talked about this before. There are reasons for lack of success. It's a little bit like an excuse, but it's not a true excuse. It's like a legitimate, in the person's mind, a legitimate reason why they haven't been able to do what they want to do. I can't do this because, and it's not their fault, it's somebody else's fault, or it's a situation's fault. I couldn't do this because, I couldn't meet this goal because, and there's always a reason for non-success. Now, is it an excuse? Well, sometimes it sounds like it. I couldn't finish the paper because I had the flu. I couldn't do this because of COVID. Right now, people who can't do what they want to do, a lot of times they're blaming COVID for it. And in some cases, that's legitimate. But you have to stop and think. You know that you haven't reached your goal. You're upset about it. And what's the reason for this? You have to make up a reason. Why do you have to make up a reason? It's because it satisfies you, and you think it's more satisfactory to other people. I couldn't make this goal. I couldn't go through college. I couldn't get the funds to do it. Now, sometimes it's very legitimate. Sometimes it feels like an excuse. And so in your own mind, as you think about what you have not been able to do, what you want to do, but what you think you failed at, how come? Why did you not be a success? Why was it success was so important to you that you couldn't work around it and have a good life despite it? So rationalization is a way for you to handle stress. It's a way of your handling why you couldn't reach the goal that you wanted to reach. And it goes into disappointment, and it goes into social situations, it goes into your health situations. Maybe you didn't have the finances to be able to afford to go to school, and so forth and so on. But that's what it is. It is a defense mechanism designed for you to handle the stress of not being able to do what it is that you wanted to do. And that could be important to you. It's important for you to have a reason. You know, in our day, we're living in a very punitive society. And in our day, we have to have a reason for everything, a reason for every failure, a reason why we haven't reached our goals, or this or that or the other. And it helps us to handle the stress because now we have a reason. Of course, I couldn't be a gymnast. You know, I don't have the physical body for it. Or of course, I couldn't go to college. I couldn't get a grant to pay for my tuition. I couldn't do it on my own. I had to work. And so it becomes a legitimate kind of reason. Sounds legitimate, but the person who is using it as a reason for not reaching their goals believes it. And an excuse, people inwardly know that they have an excuse. I didn't do my homework because. I didn't do this because. And a lot of times it will sound like an excuse, but if it sounds like an excuse and it is an excuse, it's not true rationalization. Rationalization feels real. And it is a defense mechanism that works to handle the stress of not accomplishing what you want to accomplish. And that's all right. If the body needs to do that, the body needs to do that. And it could be for real, you know. I was supposed to go to Ohio State University to get my PhD. This is true. I'm not making this up. And I didn't go because I would have had to have had the grant, and the grant fell through. I was a college professor at the time. I was teaching in Tennessee in a college as a college professor, and one of the people that I knew that it was at Ohio State University wanted me to come and have my PhD, and he would be my mentor. I'd written a book, and he liked the book, and he wanted me to come to Ohio State. And I thought that was a pretty good deal. I was willing to do that as well. But the grant never came through. Now, that's a rationalization, but it's also true. And as I think back to it, I'm really glad the way things turned out that I didn't go. You know, things would have been completely different. I never would have been a minister. It would have been a wonderful opportunity. But in a way, I'm glad I didn't go, and I'm happy with the way things turned out. So that's a rationalization, but it's also truth. It's not an excuse. Had the grant come through, I would have gone, and I would have been at Ohio State University. So at any rate, rationalization helps you to handle the stress of not being able to do something that you want to do for a very real reason. It's not like I can't do my homework because the dog ate it, or I didn't do my homework, the dog ate it, or something like that. It's not on that realm at all. It's a legitimate way for the body to handle something that has come up and have that work out so you understand, oh, there's a reason for this, and it didn't work out, but it's still okay because things worked out the way that they were supposed to. I'm a great believer in things working out the way that they're supposed to, and we have to stop to think about that, you know. Things don't always work out the way that we want, but they will work out the way that they're supposed to. So that's rationalization. The next one is attention getting, and this is not a particularly good one. Doing things to get attention. Now, everybody needs attention to a certain degree. Some people have an abnormal need for it. They have to be in the forefront. They have to be the leader. They have to be top dog. And so they will go to extreme measures to get attention, but also on a much smaller scale. They will do things to get attention within their families, pretend to be sick, talk about what's going to happen if they die, or anything to get attention from other people. Sometimes the way they dress. They dress abnormally. They talk abnormally. It's just to focus attention on themselves. For whatever reason, they have to focus attention upon themselves. They want to get attention from doing good things. They want to get attention from being a good person, but they also want to stand out. They want to look a certain way, they want to act a certain way, they want to get attention, and they can do that in various kinds of ways. The way they talk, the way they use their language, the way they dress, the things they do, the things they go into, how they manage to present themselves in a public place, and all of that. So attention-getting behavior causes attention to be drawn to yourself. It could be faking an injury. You know, I met a movie star, and she used to be on a show. It's no longer, it hasn't been shown for years. And she came to a hotel. I was working during the summer. I was a teenager. She came to a hotel for a vacation. She had part of her television crew with her, and she was fairly well known. And then what she did was she had an ankle injury. I was never convinced that that ankle injury was for real. She used crutches, she used a cane. People were paying attention to her. They made sure she got down steps all right. They made sure that she was able to walk all right. They were with her, constantly giving her attention. And I noticed that when nobody was around, her walking considerably improved. So I kind of think that she was fudging it a little for the attention that she was receiving. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I also could be right about that, because I watched her kind of from a distance. I met with her, we talked, she was playing piano. I was with her sometimes when she was practicing. She asked me about certain things about the piano. I was able to answer her questions, and it's like I could have been a friend of hers. But when she had all that attention was when she was on crutches and she had this supposed ankle injury that I'm not even sure she had. So maybe she had it, maybe she didn't have it. So I'm not mentioning her name. I do remember her name to this day, but she's no longer on television. But I just mention that because that's the kind of thing that people will do. Now, children will do it to gain attention. If there's a new baby in the family, supposing a child is about 3 years old, mom is pregnant again with another baby, and so what are they going to do? What is she going to do, the child, to get attention? Well, they're going to act sick, or they're going to act like a baby themselves. They're going to regress into a younger age period for the purpose of getting the attention that they've lost because mom is paying more attention to the new baby. There's a way to put a stop to it. You make sure that each child gets the attention that they need. You kind of have to split yourself thin sometimes to do that, but you let the child feel very important because that child can help you with the new baby. And so for you give them the attention for being a big brother or a big sister helping out, and you give them all kinds of attention and good talking to about that, you know, a lot of praise in terms of that. And when you do that, that lessens that anxiety of I'm losing mom because she's paying attention to baby brother and sister and I feel left out. Now they're too young maybe to verbalize that, but basically that's what's happening. They feel left out, they feel they've lost this attention, they want more attention, so why not become a baby again and regress into babyhood and get that attention that they used to have? Now, it's only going to turn out to be annoying to the parents, but at the same time, they have to understand what the child is going through. They're kind of going through a separation anxiety in terms of they're not getting the attention that they used to get, and they miss it. How can we make up for it? If you can prepare a child for the event of having a baby brother or sister, if you can help them to understand that they are just as important as they ever were. They're just as loved as they ever were, and you need them just as much as you ever needed them, and they can help you out, and you can thank them for it and praise them for it. What a good boy you are, how grown up you are, and make it a rewarding thing to help, not something that they have to do because they have to do it and they don't have a choice. Children don't have a whole lot of language structure, but what they do have is they have a sense of belonging or not belonging. And so if you've given them the sense of belonging, which they need to have, they continue to need it even as other brothers and sisters come along. So this is one primary area where a child will need to get attention. Adults do it by the way they dress, by the way they speak, or doing unusual things to create attention going to them. It may sometimes be subconscious, it may not be subconscious, but it is one of the ways that the body has of handling the stress of not feeling that you are getting the attention that you need. So that's the fourth one, getting attention. Going on from here, identification. Identification is trying to be like somebody you admire. It could be a person that you know. It could be a person that you don't know, but that you've read about. It could be a person in history. It could be anybody. But if a person admires another person, then they try to become like that other person they admire. And I think what may be behind it is if I admire a certain person, say a TV personality or a news personality, whatever it is, if I admire this person, then if I'm like them, people will admire me as well. If I like a certain person and I can be like them, then the people who like them will also like me. Now, I think a lot of this is subconscious, but I think this is part of the driving force of identification. And how do you identify with somebody else? You adopt their politics. You have friends just like them. You have family members like them. You copy their politics. You copy their religion. You copy the way that they dress. You copy the way that they talk. I mean, it's like you're trying to become a clone of the person that you admire because you want to be like them. You admire them. You want to be like them. Most likely it's a person that you know or some kind of a personality that is presently living. But it also could be a personality that is no longer living or a person that you've never met, a person that you don't see on television regularly. And so therefore you have to stop to think in terms of that. The identification is being like somebody else that you admire in any way that you can, dressing, talking, even the job that you have, going into a certain profession because the person that you like so much is in that profession. And so therefore you want to be like them. So you adopt a profession like they have. Now you find it mainly among young adults or teenagers who are trying to establish their personalities and don't yet know exactly who they are or what they want to become. But it is something that is prevalent to a certain degree in all ages. Identification is possible in all ages, but I think maybe it's more prevalent in teenagers or people who are young adults who are trying to achieve something that other people have achieved, trying to get the same kind of recognition, or just trying to be like them because they like them and they want to be like them. And so that's what identification is. Children go through it in hero worship. The hero worship is trying to be like the hero, like a star on television. Teenagers do the same thing. I can remember my little nephew, he was about 4 or 5. He wanted to be like Zorro. Now, Zorro was an old series, television series, and he would make the same manifestation. He'd hold his fist up and say, "Hey, Zorro." But you know, he was about 3 at the time, 3 or 4 at the time. So it occurs in all ages. And it's something that if you're doing, you need to be mindful of it. Not because it's so bad, but because it may be denying yourself and who you really are. You can spend so much time trying to be like somebody else that you deny who you really are. So we're running out of time, so I'm going to close it here, and we'll finish this up next time, and then I'll go into different types of thought processes as well. And so we'll continue next time. Please join me then.